Very good evening to all the members. I am Dr. C.S. Yashwa Dikshit, practicing company secretary at Ahmedabad. The today's webinar topic is overview on Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. IBC came into effect from 2016, though it is not been long time, but has come long way into the effective restructuring and resolution manner. So, for the overview knowledge on IBC, we have with us expert faculty CAIP Sunit Shah. IBC is bigger law, so Sunit sir will take cover the important aspect on overview of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. CA Sunit Shah is a fellow member of Institute of Chartered Accountant of India ICAI. He is qualified insolvency professional in the year 2017 and completed certificate course on forensic audit and fraud detection. He is certified independent director at Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs IICA MCA. He has been in active practice of chartered accountancy more than 18 years, and he is a founding partner in SJ and Company head office at Ahmedabad. His core area of practice and dealing with the corporate insolvency resolution process, forensic audits, bank audits, corporate audit, and tax compliance. He has acted as a resolution professional and liquidator in many companies under the insolvency across various cities in India. He has delivered online lectures under valuation of securities and financial assets at the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs IICA at New Delhi. He has delivered seminar on overview on IBC at the IBC study groups of Ahmedabad branch of the WIRC of ICAI. He has conducted various webinars on Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016 with various institutes. So we welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Yashi. Thank you so much. Should I start now?
Yes. So I would like to request CIP Sunit sir to start this session.
Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all to this session, the webinar that is being organized by ISTD. And this webinar is all about the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code that has come up in 2016, and it is affecting business in a long way these days. Although this code has not been so elder in age, but yes, it's been taking a good impact on the industry as a whole. So today's, although it's a big law that has been come up and that is being notified by the government in December 2016, but given the time frame, I will try to cover the most important aspects of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, and that too we'll try to cover from the application stage to the liquidation process of the companies, of the corporate debtors, and that will be overview, and I will try to take all the important aspects and taking into consideration the what we say, the practical example wherever I can. So given the short period, we'll start with the process, with the corporate insolvency resolution process. I'll be sharing my screen right now, and दिखाई છે? Is my slide visible?
Yes, sir.
Full screen. Okay, so we start with the brief overview on Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. So today webinar will consist of, it has been divided into 6 parts, and accordingly I have taken the first part is the overview on IBC. The second will be the procedure of admission of insolvency of corporate debtor and the demand notice thereof. Demand notice is the important aspect in insolvency process. The third will be the CRP process. The CRP, wherever it has been used, it's a corporate insolvency resolution process. The fourth will be the liquidation process of the company. Fifth will be the eligibility criteria to become an insolvency professional. And sixth will be the professional opportunities involved therein whenever this insolvency process is carried on. So we can always state that IBC is a milestone in Indian economy. This law has been proved to be one of the milestone in Indian economy to boost the ease of doing in business process. Post this, Modi government has come up. They have purposefully they have focused on ease of doing business so far as the processes of the businesses are concerned, and whatever the licenses matter or the ease of doing business is concerned. So what we can call it as IBC is one of the part of this ease of doing business process. We can say that. Next, we go to what is the objective of the IBC code. So Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code has come up with the few objectives. First objective is the company which has been facing stress due to the financial crunches or any of the operational management mismanagement that company is facing. There are chances that company is unable to pay off the dues, or the company is unable to run effectively the business that it is already into. So the IBC code is one thing we can say that it's for a recovery tool. It starts with the recovery tool, and the second thing is it's being a resolution or the restructuring process of the company can become a speedy process in this case. So it will lead to the early identification of the stress that is going on, and early identification and thereof the resolution of this company which is already undergoing the stress. So this is the basic objective of the IBC code. For example, if company is unable to pay the dues, say example company ABC is unable to pay the dues, so me as a creditor of this company can try for the recovery proceedings of the company. But after that still it is unable to pay the dues, I can initiate an insolvency proceeding against this company. So this is the basic objective, or we can say that this is the basic first step process that can be done to start with the insolvency against any of the company. But I would again like to say that this company in the purpose of IBC code is not at all the recovery. It is not like that a person is trying to use this code or this law just for the recovery purpose. The main purpose of IBC is to get the resolution of the company or to have the restructuring of the company done. So these are the two basic objectives of the IBC code 2016. So this is the chart, how and why it happens. So as I said, it starts with the liquidity trouble that company is facing. Then it comes the delay in operations, that operational mismanagement that I could say. And third is the delay in payment if company is unable to pay the dues of the creditors on time. And there might be the cases that there is a disruption in because of this, there might be a complete disruption in the operation that might happen, leading to the operational loss and erosion of the net worth. The company's net worth is judged or it's taken into consideration through, if we see a balance sheet, it is through a erosion of the net worth in the company when the liabilities part of the balance sheet exceeds the assets parts of the company. That is called the complete erosion, and the company becomes sick. So in that case, what happens to the creditors? So creditor is now given an option. In this case, they can start with the demand of their amount from the company, from the corporate debtor, and if in that case they are unable to pay, that applicant will be able to file the insolvency proceeding against the company.
Sir,
Excuse me,
can you
Mr.
please
Sunil.
reshare the screen? Because we are unable to see your screen.
Yeah,
Yes,
now it is visible. Yeah,
perfect.
thank you.
Is it visible now?
Yeah,
Yes,
we
sir.
can see the benefits slide. If you could please go on in
Next,
the full
we go
screen.
to the benefits of the IBC code is like time-bound settlement of insolvency. There is a regulator agency that is called Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India that is keeping a watch on this code or this law, or the regulators and the professionals involved in this company, or they are also taking the having the watch over the corporate data. So in that case, all these things are very much important in IBC, where these are the benefits of the IBC code, wherein not just is the recovery is the mechanism. There is a mechanism that because of this fear, company will try to restructure itself, the capital restructuring or any of the restructuring that company might do, or the operational restructuring that company might do willing to do. So that is an early sign that if there is a stress, they need to get out of these things. Otherwise, there are probable chances of the company or any of the creditor taking the company into the insolvency process. There are chances that banks like giving funds to the company, so there the bankers are showing that that loan amount to the company in the balance sheet of the banks, which is although a NPA account, they try to pull that account into the balance sheet, showing that balance sheet these are the recoverable amount, but there are chances that company that amount will never be recovered from the company. So in that case, if this insolvency proceeding is going on or it has been initiated, in that case they will be able to lock up the assets, or the locked up assets will be freed by the bankers or the creditor who has started with the insolvency resolution process against the company. So this all these things and this fear and all this the kind of regulation that has come up, that will significantly improve the ease of doing business in the case of business, any kind of business that is being running these days. Okay, next is the applicability of the provision of IBC. This applicability is just right now is applicable only to the companies incorporated in the Companies Act 2013 and the LLPs incorporated under the LLP Act 2008. So as of now, it is not applicable to the individuals or the partnership firm that is yet not been notified by the government, although it has been in the law, but it has not been yet notified by the government. So once and for all it has been notified, this insolvency against the individuals and also the partnership firm will come into the being. So what does this mean? Company and the LLP, so any individual or a firm or any of the persons as defined under the law can initiate a insolvency proceeding against the company and the LLP. So जिसके सामने इंसॉल्वेंसी करना है, that has to be a private limited company or the companies incorporated under the Companies Act, or it has to be a LLP. So if individual or any of the firm that is under the default or is not able to pay the amount, in that case the insolvency is cannot be initiated yet. So it till it has been notified by the government in the parliament. So this is the short journey that has come up from 1st December 2016 that IBC code came into effect. The first matter of insolvency was taken up in January 17, 2017.
Excuse me, Mr.
It was being taken
Sunil.
up by the Mumbai bench NCLT, where Innovative Industry was the first company that was admitted to the corporate insolvency resolution process. Then several amendments have come up, and the last amendment that came up was in March 12, 2020, wherein it was the effect of COVID was given. On 25th of March, there was an amendment to this law wherein it was stated that for a shorter period of time or for the COVID defaults, the insolvency proceeding will not be initiated against the company.
Excuse me, Mr. Sunil. We are not able to see your screen again.
Limit. So initially, when this law was introduced, the threshold limit was rupees 1 lakh. So if there is a default of rupees 1 lakh by the corporate debtor, by the companies or by the LLPs, anyone would be able to initiate the insolvency proceeding against the company. But due to this COVID impact and to protect the rights of the MSME companies that were being dragged to the insolvency process for the meager amount, this limit of rupees 1 lakh was increased to rupees 1 crore from 25th of March. 25th of March 2020, this amount was increased from rupees 1 lakh to 1 crore. So now a minimum default of rupees 1 crore is required in case any of the insolvency proceedings are to be taken against the companies or the LLPs. And it is a welcome change so far as this COVID impact is concerned, because it's a huge relief to the small and medium scale industries, where I said it was dragged to the insolvency proceedings within for the shorter amount of defaults.
Sir, we are again unable to see your slide. Yes, now it's visible.
Is it okay now?
Yes. Not to go slideshow mode.
Hmm? Is it visible now?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, so now, as I said, section 4 of the IBC code defines the minimum amount of default, and which was 1 lakh rupees. So now a provision to section 4 was added to the section on 25th March by the notification 24th March, which stated that the amount of default is now being increased to rupees 1 crore. So as I said, 1 crore is the minimum amount of default that is required as of now to initiate the insolvency proceeding against the company or the LLPs. So now we go to how the process of this admission of CRP is initiated, and how the process goes on, which is like a very, I can say, it's a complicated process so far as the law is concerned. But the time frame involved in this corporate insolvency resolution process is mere 180 days. So the resolution of the companies has to be availed, or the maximum time frame allowed is 180 days. So as such, it's a shorter period of time wherein we can get the resolution or the restructuring or the liquidation of the company done. So how it starts? It starts with the default cases, as has been said in the last slides. It starts with the default. So once the company is into default, so as of now, we say, take an example like a company is having a default of rupees 5 crore, whether that has been landed by the banks or whether that has been landed by the individuals or any of the inter-corporate deposits. So in that case, if there is a default, the default is the basic thing where the insolvency has to start. So default, if company is having, then that default is done to whom? So it can be, there are three kinds of default that can be done, like financial creditor. So financial creditor, if XYZ has given a actual amount, like bankers have given actual amount to the companies, so that is called, who that banker will called be a financial creditor. The second thing is any of the entity who has given a goods or services, provided goods and services to the companies. So in that case, he will become an operational creditor. He will be termed as an operational creditor. It is in slideshow mode.
Mr. Suneet, don't move into the slideshow mode, because I think there is some issue when it moves into the slideshow mode. Your screen gets freezed there itself. So you can just move the slides in the regular PowerPoint itself.
Just a second, some setting issues. I'll be doing it in a slideshow mode again. Is it okay now?
No, it did not move into the slideshow mode. So you can move.
So who can initiate a insolvency against the company? First, we discussed against whom it can be initiated is the companies and the LLPs. So who can initiate is the financial creditor who has given actual loan, or the operational creditor who has given the goods or services, provided goods and services to the corporate debtor, and he is unable to pay the dues. And third is the corporate applicant himself. So even if the company is facing the stress, they can directly, or they can suo moto apply for their insolvency against themselves, going under section 10, in which case the consent of all the shareholders will be required. as we discussed, who can invoke CIRP? That is everywhere. It's like corporate insolvency resolution process. It can be initiated by financial creditor or the operational creditor or the corporate debtor himself under Section 10. So this is a small definition of a financial creditor. As I said, कि financial creditor is a person to whom a financial debt is owed. So जो बोलते हैं ना actual पैसा जिसने दिया है. So a company who has given loan to other company or a banker who has given a loan to the other company in a pure form of money will be defined as a financial creditor. Operational creditor is being defined in section 520 of the IBC code, which states that OC is a person to whom an operational debt is due, as I said, like goods or services that has been provided, but now it has to be that too, it has to be above rupees 1 crore, which has to be a default amount in case to be qualified for the filing of insolvency against the company. So how it operates is operational creditor will have to issue a demand notice against the company stating that yes, my dues are are overdue and you need to pay the amount to me. In that case, within the 10 days of the receipt of the notice, this corporate debtor has to revert whether he is willing to pay or not. In case they are not willing to pay, after 10 days, a company or any of the individual who is willing to initiate the corporate insolvency resolution process will be filing an application with the NCLT along with this proof of this serving notice to the company that yes, we have served the notice, and within 10 days he is not able to reply or he is not able to pay the amount, so that NCLT will consider his matter of taking the company into insolvency. So financial creditor has now or the operational creditor has now applied to the NCLT for the insolvency against the company. So there might be several hearings that might take place. There might be justifications. There might be lawyers involved. There might be cases of what we call it as there might be dispute between both the corporate debtor and the applicant. So after resolving all these things, and once the NCLT decides that yes, this is a fit case for insolvency, the company will be admitted to the insolvency process, and the insolvency resolution professional, what we call it as a IRP or the RP resolution professional, so he is a qualified insolvency professional, will take over, and that company will be now into the charge of the insolvency resolution process, insolvency resolution professional. So now the directors of the company, they will get suspended. The board of the directors of the company will be suspended only just of a mere fact that they were unable to pay the amount and NCLT has admitted the matter to the insolvency. So post that, this entire charge of the company will rest with the insolvency professional, and insolvency professional will have to take the charge of the company. He will give a public announcement. The first thing that we'll be doing is giving the public announcement in the newspaper stating that yes, this company is in my charge, this company is undergoing insolvency process, and whosoever the creditors across the country or anywhere, any type of creditors will have to stating that they will have to file the claims with the insolvency professional, stating that yes, their claims are due. So now single applicant has started with the insolvency proceeding whose dues was there, but now the entire bulk of the creditors of the company will be filing claim against the company with the insolvency professional. So this is the chart wherein stated that how insolvency will be taking place, but we'll be going step by step, which are coming in the next slides.
Sunilji, your screen is not visible again.
So this is the chart again. Public announcement will be done by the insolvency professional, as I said. Second will be intimation to the various authorities. So the moment insolvency starts, the order is being passed, insolvency professional will intimate to all the various authorities that were connected or that were associated with the corporate data, like GST department, the income tax department, like SEBI, CDSL, NSDL in case of the listed companies, or whatever department that are applicable to the corporate data or the company into insolvency. He will be intimating to the various authorities that yes, this company is into the insolvency, even the ROC. Next will be he'll be taking the charge of all the assets of the corporate debtor. So he will get in he will get in hold of the balance sheet of the company, see what are the assets of the company wherever located across the country. He will have to take charge of all the assets of the company, and that assets of the company will remain in the charge of the insolvency professional. Along with the assets, he will also have to take charge of the bank accounts of the company. So even the bank account of the company, the directors will not be able to operate, and insolvency professional will take charge, and he will have all rights subject to the committee. He will be able to operate the bank accounts of the company. So even अगर company में बहुत सारा पैसा पड़ा है, और whatever be the funds that are lying as on the CRP date will come into the charge of the insolvency professional, and board of director will not have any rights then to issue any of the checks or any of the payments that directors will be able to make. So even the banks will be intimated. बहुत सी बार ऐसा करते हैं कि insolvency professional, as per experience, we go intimate all the bank accounts of the company, stating that yes, this company is into insolvency and now you need to freeze the accounts of the company. So there will be a debit freeze. So even banks will not be able to freeze, issue any of the checks or debit any of the checks in the company. So post that, there will be several claims that are coming up. So there, the receipt of the claims will be done, and verification of claims will be done by the insolvency professional, stating or seeing that, verifying that yes, these claims are valid and these claims are absolute in terms of whatever being stated in the balance sheet or the books of accounts of the company.
Sir, just a minute. We are unable to see your PPT. Sir, not to start your PPT in slideshow mode.
Okay. So now it's okay?
Yes.
So once verification of the claims is being done, so IP will be deciding yes, these are the final list of claims. On that basis, they will be able. He will have to constitute a committee of creditors. What we call it is the committee of creditors will constitute the financial creditors. All the financial creditors जिनका claim आया है, they will be included in the committee of creditors, and that constitution will be done. Even the operational creditors के जो claim आ रहे हैं, like they all will be accepted, but they will not form part of the committee of creditors. They will not be having a voting right for all the further course of action or further course of resolutions that are to be passed by the creditors along with the insolvency professional. And post 30 days, within 30 days of this insolvency proceeding starting, insolvency professional will be holding the first meeting of the committee of creditors. They will have to issue notice to the committee of creditors and calling for the first committee of creditors ka meeting bulaya jayega, wherein all the financial creditors who have submitted the claim will form part of the committee of creditors for future decision making process, and for passing of any of the resolution or whatever be the going concern, or it's being, or the company, the operation of the company has been stopped. All these such kind of decisions will have to be taken in the committee of creditors meeting that will be held every next time. So this is the process how public announcement, as I stated, it will be issued in two newspaper, one in vernacular language and the second will be the English language. Insolvency professional will be issuing the public announcement, and it will be issued at a place where the registered office of the corporate debtor is situated, or any of the major operations that corporate debtor was taking place in any of the city or the state. So there they will be having, they will be issuing the public announcement, and that public announcement will state that whatever be the creditors of the company will have to submit a claim to the insolvency professional. This is it will be issued in the form A as prescribed. So this is the detailing that is being done. As I said, various intimation to various authorities will be done, like income tax, GST, other applicable ROC, NSDL, CDL. Everywhere, along with the copy of order, they will submit that this company is undergoing insolvency processes. As I said, taking charge of the assets of the company anywhere in the country, all the assets of the company, including the investment part, the tangible, intangible assets, or the bank accounts of the company, whatever is appearing the asset side of the balance sheet will have to be taken in charge by the corporate, by the insolvency resolution professional, and without his consent or his permission, none of the assets can be sold or none of the assets can be charged further. As I said, receipt of the claims. So all the claims received and then verified, and after verification, as I said, the constitution of committee will be done. This is again like there might be cases that insolvency resolution professional or the person who has submitted the claim, there might be a dispute or there might be a difference of opinion, or there might be cases where that claim has been submitted but the books of account is revealing something else or some other figures are being revealed. In this case, there might be justifications to be given by the creditor, and it has to be proved. In both the case, it has to be agreed upon, and post that the claim has to be accepted and taken forward for the constitution of the committee. As I said, constitution of committee is formed under section 21. So constitution is committee is being formed where it will only constitute of the financial creditor and not the operational creditor. In case the operational creditor, there is a regulation to this effect that yes, if there are operational creditor which are more than 10% of the total claims received, in that case the operational creditor, the representative of operational creditor will also form part of this committee meeting, but the operational creditor in any case will not be provided any of the voting rights, or they will not have a say in the decisions or the resolutions of the company that are being taken care by the insolvency professional or by the committee of creditors. As I said, voting right. So why voting right is important? The reason being is any of the resolution or any of the decisions to be taken that about the company that is undergoing insolvency, in that case 66% approval of the COC members is required for any of the resolution to go through or any of the resolution to have an effect to this process. So 66% is the minimum share. In several cases there are 70 90 75% or 90% approval of COC is also required in certain cases, but majority of the decisions are being taken by the approval of the 66% of the COC members. COC members may meet in person or through a video conferencing. So a video conferencing facility may be provided to the committee of creditors or the members involved therein. There might be chances that they are unable to have access to the physical location where meeting has been held. So in that case, they may request for the video conferencing and they can be part of the committee or in its proceeding through a video conferencing. So holding of the first meeting of committee of creditors is very much important, wherein several decisions are being taken. So like whatever be the process or whatever be the actions that have been taken by the insolvency resolution process in first 30 days will be discussed in the first committee of creditors meeting, and in that case taking the process further for next 5 months, which is like total 180 days, 6 months. So 1 month is already over, so next 5 months how things are to be taken forward will be discussed. All the acts done or whatever be the issues that are being faced by the insolvency process, insolvency resolution professional during these 30 days will be discussed in the committee of creditors meeting, and may take an assent or may take a consent from the committee of creditors to behave in a particular fashion or to take any of the acts for the effective running of the CIRP process. So as we are discussing about the IRP, which was the terminology used in last slide, so which is called interim resolution professional, and now we'll be using the terminology resolution professional, that is for the next 5 months. So just a change of a terminology. First month the insolvency professional appointed is termed as the interim resolution professional, and the moment that insolvency professional is further continued for 5 months, he is termed as now a resolution professional. Many a time IRP or RP is being interconnected and they are exchanged in so far as the usage is concerned. So in that case, that is also fine. But the exact terminology is a resolution professional will be taking over for the next 5 months. Although the same insolvency professional is taking forward, he will be called a resolution professional for this purpose. There are several duties involved for RP. So he has to take the charge of the company's asset, but along with that he has to preserve and protect the assets of the company. So it will be his responsibility to take the and preserve the assets of the company. He has to take care enough so that the assets are not being damaged or not being reduced to a value where it was actually of a higher value on the CIRP date. So even in case where required, he has to take the insurance of the, this is the insolvent company. So right, then several times there are cases that when company is facing a stress, in that case they forget to take all the precautions or all the insurance kind of thing, they safety measures they are unable to take. So while taking the charge and while seeing the situation of the company, he may decide to take the insurance of the company or any of the acts that is required to preserve the the assets of the company, its security, and also in case of the going concern, if the company is operated, in that case taking the security of or ensuring the security of all the employees involved or the workers involved in the company. Next stage will be the resolution professional will be preparing an information memorandum. In that case, information memorandum is a document wherein all the assets and all the liabilities of the company are being stated, all the litigation parts that are being going over the company, or any of the special acts or any of the special circumstances or events or any of the financials or the figures that he has come across, he will specify in the information memorandum, which will be the liabilities and the assets parts of the company. The Okay, so next stage coming is about the expression of interest. So as I said, okay, once this information memorandum is being prepared, the next stage will be like issuing an expression of interest in the newspaper again. So this will be the second publication that will be coming up by the insolvency professional, wherein it will be stated in the expression of interest that whosoever the eligible applicant, whosoever is willing, can come forward with their resolution plan to take over this company along with this assets and the liabilities. Liabilities means not all the liabilities, only the liabilities wherein the claims have been submitted. All these liabilities along with the assets of the company, whosoever is willing will be coming forward with the resolution plan. So this resolution plan will have to be submitted. So on the basis of the EOI that has been published, so there are 60 days being provided. Maybe this time frame may be extended, looking at if there are all the possibilities that yes, some more resolution plans will be coming up. In that case the time may be extended, but 60 days time frame is given in the expression of interest, wherein the resolution plan will be coming up and will be analyzed further by the committee of creditors and the resolution professional, as definitely as per in accordance with the law, IBC law, whether it has to be a valid resolution plan. In that case, the resolution plan will be vetted by the legal team or by the insolvency professional in accordance with the law, and that resolution plan will be put forward with the committee of creditors, and the meeting will be called for analyzing this resolution plan. As we discussed, like resolution is the core objective and core focus of the insolvency and bankruptcy code. So this is the most important task, and this is the primary base or the basic objective, we could say, for getting the resolution of the company. So getting the resolution plan is the core focus or the core basic object. So every resolution professional or every of the creditor should try a little hard to get the resolution plan done, so that the company doesn't move forward to the liquidation, and this company can again get restructured, and the potential buyer who is coming up will be running the company again. So all the employees, all the assets of the company, rather than going for a liquidation and getting it scrapped and people losing jobs, they will be again getting a life into the company, and this company will be taking forward. So this is the important part of the IBC process, that is submission of a resolution plan or getting a resolution plan. So we have stated here who can prepare and submit a resolution plan. So any of the person who is willing will be able to submit a resolution plan in the prescribed format and as per the laws and the policies and principles or the regulation provided in the IBC code. As per that, it has to satisfy all these regulations, and accordingly they will be preparing and submitting the resolution plan. So financial creditors or the operational creditors or the corporate debtor himself, in case of MSMEs, I will come to it later. So forget right now, forget corporate debtor, but yes, financial creditors, operational creditors, committee of creditors, or anyone or any one or more shareholders of the CD or the corporate debtor, any one or more employees of the company, or if any person who is interested in buying one or more of the assets of the CD, or any person as the RP may permit, but subject to the law. But subject to law. So all these persons will be able to submit a resolution plan. So as stated, there is no limit or number of resolution plan which can be prepared and submitted. So there can be a modification in a resolution plan also. So once submitted, it's not like that. Okay, it is forever this resolution plan will be valid. And if they do not have a chance to modify, looking at the situation and post meeting the committee of creditors and the resolution professional, if willing or if they wish to increase the bid or change in the terms of the payment or any of the changes they wish, they will also be able to do it. So it has been section 29A again is important. So who cannot become a resolution applicant? So as we discussed, who can become now, who cannot become a resolution applicant is a undischarged insolvent. So like if he's an undischarged insolvent already, if he's a willful defaulter, if he is having an NPA account if any of the bank, or if he's convicted of any of the offense or disqualified to act as a director or prohibited by SEBI. So there is a list of ineligibilities that have been provided in the law. So these people cannot apply for they cannot come up with a resolution plan. However, there is a one exclusion. So there is like MSMEs, MSMEs are excluded from the applicability of 29A. So except the willful default. So MSME, if they willing, can apply for the resolution plan for the insolvent company. In this case, section 29A is not applicable, except is only the thing is that MSME should not be a willful defaulter. Otherwise, other clauses are not applicable. And yes, more important is that ineligibility is it should not be a related party as stated under section 29A or as defined by the act. So there is a separate section which defines the related party. So that related party cannot apply if related to the corporate debtor or to the directors of the company. There is a list of related parties which cannot apply for the resolution plan to the company. So these are the ineligibility as provided under section 29A. So these are the mandatory contents of what resolution plan will consist of. So resolution plan will consist of the basic offer or a bid offer or the amount at which this resolution applicant is willing to take over this company. The second thing will be the terms of payment will be decided. They can there is nothing like there is no law or there is no regulation prescribed wherein this payment has to be done within a prescribed period. A resolution applicant at his own will or as per his wish or as per his financial commitments or his comfort, he can propose a plan wherein he can state that he will be paying off the resolution plan amount within so and so period. Like he can propose an installment, he can propose immediate payment, he can propose payments after 6 months along with interest, or with after 12 months along with interest, or any kind of combination he can do and provide with the resolution plan. In that case, he has to show what will be the sources of fund. So from where this amount, say if amount he is proposing an amount of say 50 crore to get over a company or to take over a company, he will have to specify the source of funds. So from where he'll be getting the fund, because as we said, even after taking over the company, there might be chances that he is not able to run the company effectively. So the main purpose is resolution and to take over the company forward. So naturally, the source of funds or his plans or purposes should be very much clear, and accordingly, he will be able to get this company resolved by the committee of creditors, or take over this company by the committee of creditors and the resolution professional. Jointly they will decide that yes, this company is to be given to this resolution applicant. So there might be cases that there are several resolution plans coming up. So this deep analysis of all the resolution plans will be done by the resolution professional, and will be put along with the evaluation metrics or whatever the criteria that they have fixed with the fixed in the committee of creditors meeting. They will verify those criteria along with the resolution plan, and the selection of best resolution plan will be done, which will get into a minimal haircut. So minimal haircut mean the creditors, or any of the creditors like financial creditors or the operational creditors, in that case they need to take into effect, or they need to they need to see that the interest of all each class of creditors has been satisfied to a greater extent, and which should involve in the minimal haircut of the creditors. So the more and more amount is being paid to the creditor, those and effective running he'll be able to do, those two criteria will be taken into consideration for for selection of the best resolution applicant from all the resolution plans received during the period. So this was the resolution plan CIRP process, I would say. So this is the entire CIRP process which has been taken in short. So now the CIP process gets over once the resolution plan has been accepted. Say there were 5 resolution plan, 10 resolution plan. After all the marathon exercise that has been done, post that they will be coming up with the conclusion that yes, this is the resolution plan we are selecting, and you are the resolution plans will be put up for the COC meeting, among the COC meeting, for its voting. And once the 66% voting in whomsoever favor this resolution plan, the COC members are voting in the particular resolution plan above 66%, that resolution plan will be approved by the committee of creditors. And this resolution plan approved, resolution professional will take this resolution plan along with the required documents and will put up with the NCLT for its approval. So it's once COC approves this resolution plan, again will be submitted to the NCLT for its approval. And once the NCLT is of the opinion, yes, that this resolution plan is in accordance with the law and is as per and is duly approved by the committee of creditors meeting, and is satisfy all the provisions and sections and the regulations of the law, the NCLT will be approving the resolution plan. And once this resolution plan is approved, this resolution applicant will be intimated for the same, and then the implementation, or we can call it as a takeover handover process, will be initiated. So this company now, resolution professional, will be handing over to the resolution applicant, and the process of resolution CIP process gets end here. So now what if no resolution plans are coming up, or in case the resolution plans that have come up are not being accepted by the committee of creditors due to several reasons? Say the amount offered by the resolution applicant is not great, or not to the extent that what is being expected by the committee of creditors, or it is not satisfying the various laws or various sections of the IBC code. In that case, this resolution plan, there are chances that this is all the resolution plans or one of the resolution plan which have come up might be rejected by the committee of creditors. So once this resolution plan is being rejected by the committee of creditors, in that case the CIP process ends, and post this matter, it is compulsory that out of this, the approval of the resolution plan, rejection of the resolution plan, or completion of the 180 days, whichever is earlier, on that day it will be deemed to this CIP process will end. And in case nothing is turning up or no resolution is coming up, this company will now go into the liquidation. This liquidation process, this fact will be intimated by the resolution professional to the NCLT that yes, no resolution has come up. So in that case, liquidation process, for initiation of liquidation process, NCLT again will be application will be moved to the NCLT, and NCLT after due consideration will order that yes, this company is now, previously it was into insolvency process, so now this company is into the liquidation process. So same process, so accordingly CIP process, in that case appointment of insolvency professional was done. So in this case appointment of liquidator will be done. Obviously and certainly the insolvency professional, the interim or the resolution professional who has conducted the CIP process can very well become a liquidator for this purpose even. So again, the liquidation process will start, and liquidation process will start with the public announcement. So this will be the this will again be the public announcement or the publication that will be done in the newspaper for recalling of the claims against the company. So claims will come up, the preliminary record or the statement of affairs of the company will be made, and this will again be filed with the NCLT for its due approval. And on this basis, the committee of creditors we have formed, in this case the stakeholders committee or the monitoring committee will be formed, who will guide the process of the liquidation throughout the period. So liquidation process is right now prescribed up to 1 year, which can be extended up to 2 years, but right now that liquidation process has to be completed within a period of 1 year. So information memorandum was prepared. So in CIP process here, asset memorandum will be prepared, and again the valuation will have to be done by the independent valuers. And post that, this memorandum is being prepared, the process of asset sale, because now no company is taking over this company, so the assets of the company will have to be sold off. So this asset sale will be done either by auction process or by the private sale. So although private sale is very much limited right now, being permitted by law, for a limited purpose it's being permitted, but yes, majority of the sale of the assets will be done by the auction process. So auction will take place, and once the proceeds of the company, proceeds of the assets are coming into the account of the insolvency of the liquidating company, in that case all the assets will be sold off, all the statement of the liabilities will be made afresh, and in after that the distribution process of the proceeds that have come up will take place, that will start, that will initiate rather. So this, it's nothing stated that it's not like that, okay, the proceeds can be distributed in the manner or in any of the biased manner can be done. So for that purpose also section 53 of the insolvency and bankruptcy code prescribed waterfall mechanism that is being provided. So how this amount which has come up or from the asset sale of the company will be distributed. So this the proceed will be distributed in a manner that has been shown in this chart. So first of all the liquidation cost or the insolvency resolution process cost will be paid off. Second will be the secured creditors or the workman dues will be paid up. Then amount if remaining employees or other workmen dues which are not mentioned about will be paid up. Post that unsecured creditors will be paid up, and then central government, state government dues or any of the remaining dues that are yet to be paid will be paid. And then comes the next stage is for the preference shareholders and the equity shareholders, if any amount is remaining. So generally this amount, it's our experience that this amount, no amount remains for to be paid by the preference shareholders and the equity shareholders. So here we come to an end of the CIRP process and the liquidation process as stated in the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. So next is if time permit, if we have time for 5 minutes, we can just, I will go through the eligibility criteria, how to become an insolvency professional, and what are the professional opportunities involved there too. So how to become an insolvency professional is, there is a qualification involved, there is an examination involved which has been taken over by the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. So there is a process, or there is a eligibility criteria involved in that which have been mentioned. So there are two routes, as we can say. There is a limited insolvency examination that is being held and 50 hours of practical training. or there is a other way is complete. You need to complete the graduate insolvency program conducted by the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. So these are the two means or two ways we can qualify for this examination and become an insolvency professional. What are the qualification involved? So in case a professional is involved, like a chartered accountant or a company secretary or a cost accountant, in that case 10 years of experience is required, 10 years of membership is required to enroll for this, or an advocate enroll with the bar council. For all those professionals, 10 years of experience is required. They can apply for this examination and qualify the examination to be called as an insolvency professional. So for there is if a professional is not there, or if some of the person who is not a professional as prescribed, he need to have a 15 years of experience in management after receiving a bachelor degree, can apply for this examination. Passing an examination is must, so we can apply for this examination and then get qualified as an insolvency professional. So till insolvency is not being cleared, so insolvency professionals and those who are not insolvency professional, there is a whole lot of professional opportunities that are being that are coming up in case he is an insolvency professional, in case he is not an insolvency professional too. As I stated, that if company is a going concern, in that case, all the compliances, all the accounting part, all the taxation, all the advisories, or all the things that are being done for a running company has to be done for the insolvency company as well. So naturally, all the accounting, auditing part, the taxation part, the advisory. So insolvency professional will appoint the other professionals to get these things done for, even for the insolvency company he is handling. So accounting, internal audit, or which we can call it as a forensic audit, or for the valuation purpose, all the assets of the companies are to be valued. So even the valuers, this insolvency professional will be appointing, or any of the additional services that might be required for the company secretarial work, for the ROC compliances, will have to be taken care of, and there can be no default which can be accepted even during the insolvency process is going on. So insolvency professional has to take care of all these compliances and has to get all these compliances done. So naturally, he will be appointing other professionals, those who are not insolvency professional, and get these assignments done by other professionals as well. So these are the opportunities for the insolvency professional. So he can be appointed as a resolution professional, as a liquidator, or he can also be appointed, those who are qualified insolvency professional can also be appointed as an administrator under the SEBI, and he can also be appointed as an authorized representative. So there might be chances that some of the creditors are not able to attend the committee of creditors meeting. So in that case, law also permits to appoint any of the insolvency professional to act as an authorized representative in their case. So there is also a professional opportunity involved. The next is the NCLT and the NCLAT appearance. So representation can be done in the NCLT or NCLAT, where this application of insolvency is being done, wherein the financial creditors or the operational creditor or the corporate debtors or any of the creditors like home buyers, wherein the insolvency professional can make a representation in the NCLT. So this is also permitted, wherein professionals will be able to represent in the NCLT against the judges. Other services, as we can say, verification of claims. As we said, there might be chances that huge number of claims are coming up, and within 30 days, the constitution of committee is to be done. So there are chances that insolvency professional will hire a professional agency wherein they can get the verification of claims done under the CRP or the liquidation process that is going on. In case arrangement of finance, so there might be cases that companies already understand that there might not be a liquid fund to carry on the CRP process. So in that case, they will be arranging for the finance during the CRP period also. As I said, forensic and transaction audit, or the preparation of resolution plan. Yes, the resolution applicant, sometimes it's a complicated process to get the resolution plan made. So resolution applicant will be appointing a professional for this purpose to get the resolution plan prepared and being submitted to the insolvency professional. Once a resolution plan is being submitted to the insolvency professional, he will also appoint a external agency for the evaluation of the resolution plan or the due diligence, as I said, section 29, whether he is ineligible or not. For this purpose also independent agencies or independent professionals are being involved, so that this they can get a report of the proper accountability being done as per the law, or proper it has satisfied with all the provisions of the law. So there are so many services which can be provided. So these are the what we call as additional services which a professional can provide while during the insolvency process is going on, although he is not a qualified insolvency professional. So with this limited time I was given, I might be several times I might be fast at several places, but this is the time frame I had to complete, and I am thankful to all for the patient listening, for all the participants, students, the professional, or the dignitaries that are present and listening to me. I'm thankful to all for any of the queries or any of the discussion, suggestion, or any of the inputs that you would like to state. I am always available at my mail ID. I can always contact me through this social media link, or you can call me for these queries or any of the suggestions that you might need to improve. Also to improve, if I was fast, or if I was not able to or if I was not clear on certain matters, you can anytime call me, and I'll be available for this purpose. Thank you so much. Thank you for the patient listening. Thanks to the moderator, thanks to the organizer, thanks to ISTD, and all the dignitaries who have given me a chance to present my session on the overview of IBC. I thank you all. I thank you so much.
We thank you, Sunit Shah, for deliver a knowledgeable and valuable session on IBC Code 2016. As IBC is bigger law, so in the short span of time, Sir will try to cover at the important aspects under the IBC Code 2016. Now, I would like to request any participants who have any query or any doubt related to overview and IBC Code 2016, so they can raise the hand or can ask the question in chat box. Any participants have any query? There is one feedback from Chaugan sir, that is, thanks Sunit ji for giving us a very valuable information on IBC and liquidation process. With regards and best wishes.
I thank you, sir. I thank you for giving this opportunity, and I thank you for being making me part to this presentation. Thank you so much, sir.
So in case there are no questions from the participants, we have a comment from Uday Paliwal sir as well. A good presentation. There were some network issues, but overall good presentation. So that's a feedback that Professor Uday Paliwal has also shared.
So let's one feedback from Uday Paliwal sir, who is a dean of Nirma University. Good presentation, and there were some network issue, but good presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
So we conclude this session here.
Dr. Yashri, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess there are no questions from the participants. I just checked the questions tab as well, and there are
Yes.
no questions in the chat box or raised hand option as well. So I would like to thank Suneet sir and Yashri ma'am for sparing their valuable time and shared, and especially Suneet sir for sharing his valuable knowledge, and Yashri ma'am for moderating the session so well. Thank you so much. And on behalf of ISTD Ahmedabad chapter, I thank you for such a great session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Yashi. Thank you so much.